Main Street really is kind of one of the last places I think where we do get that community feeling.
We give so much back to the community versus a big box store. All of our money stays here, all of our employees live here, and then all of our employees, in turn, since we work for small home-owned business, we like to spend our money at other locally owned businesses. So it just kind of goes around in a big circle to the home-owned businesses.
By keeping your money locally, you're employing local people, which I just think it's the thing to do. I think it's the right thing to do because you're giving back to the community that gives you so much.
Americans should care about their main streets because that is the heart of any community. A main street is what makes your town as great as it is. It's a family tradition. It's just amazing what a main street can do.
The independent businessman is more responsive to a community needs than a chain store. Presumably, an independent will live in or around the community and know what's going on.
Americans should care about Main Streets and Main Street programs and districts because the businesses there not only provide diversity, but they provide strength.
So you can see we have a little bit of fun on these road trips, but it actually is work because we're traveling such great distances. We usually travel in the morning, could be a 4 or 5 hour drive, especially when we did Route 66. I think the longest drive was from Tucson to the Santa Monica Pier. And dealing with LA traffic, I had to be up at 4 o'clock in the morning to get that team in the van, awake, into Los Angeles by 11 o'clock that morning. That was quite a challenge to say the least, especially weaving through those mountain roads. Has anybody ever been to Sedona? It's absolutely gorgeous, but wow, it's not a good place to drive at 4 o'clock in the morning while you're trying to look for all the elk that are around there. So, speaking of main streets, one of the best ways we think that you can build your local brand is to tell your main street story. Every business has a unique story. Maybe you are a 4th generation baker and you've been on the same corner for 150 years and you serve on city council and you support local community groups, or maybe you're an ex-corporate person and you were sick of the corporate grind and you wanted to live the American dream and open your small businesses. This is a story that you need to tell to help build your local brand. It humanizes your story. It can really, really solidify your relationship with customers and future customers. In addition, everybody knows what an elevator speech is, right? Build that Main Street story into your elevator speech. I'm sure lots of folks have met each other for the first time today. You had your elevator speech. Take some time to develop that. That first impression is extremely important. So why not tell that story up front, that Main Street story, and then tie in some of the statistics that I shared with you today. I can't tell you how many times I've had my own elevator speech for what I do, and I talk about the importance of locally owned businesses and that you recirculate 3 times more money into the local economy. Almost every single time, the person is just absolutely stunned. They had no idea. So try and work that into your elevator speech. In addition, this was talked about earlier at great length, and I cannot emphasize it more. You can do well by doing good. We call them indie acts of kindness. We actually have a blog post series that we do. We probably profiled 100 or so businesses across the country that are doing great things in their community. You know, everything from Habitat for Humanity, Make-A-Wish, and everything in between. That's a great way to build your local brand. You're earning the trust of the local community. And sometimes things go wrong. You might have a PR crisis at your business. And if you've done and worked hard to build that trust in the local community, they can be very forgiving. If you can, try and work with a local charity. I know you guys probably get hit up 2-3 times a day by charities that need help and support. Try and pick, and you just can't deal with them all. Try and pick one that's near and dear to your heart. Maybe you had a family member that was affected by cancer, or you love dogs, or whatever it may be. Try and pick 1 or 2 that you can support. I actually want to kind of touch base based on some conversations I heard earlier. There's a really neat program that a small gift shop in Suffolk, Virginia, which is very close to Virginia Beach, did. And they actually worked that into social media and had tremendous success with it. Her name is Allison Dodson. She owns now 3 small gift stores in the Virginia Beach area. And she was being hit up no less than 4 or 5 times a day by community groups that needed money or resources. And you don't want to turn them all down, but you can't really deal with each one. So she got together with her marketing staff and came up with an idea. Essentially, anybody that comes in with a handout, let her customers pick on Facebook which charity to support that month, and then ask that charity to use their social media channels to vote for them for that month. So you're using your own social media base as well as the charities. So she is able to work with 12 charities a year. She gives, what essentially they do is it's just a roundup program. You buy something and it ends up being $11.98. You ask the customer to round it up to $12. Last year she raised $48,000 for charities in the Hampton Roads area. So I wanted to bring that up as an example, but try and work with a local charity. There are also national charities with local chapters. It'll, and it was said earlier, it will make you feel good and it will help you build that local brand. Now I saw this, I think it was a hardware store, and forgive me because I'd love to give them credit for this idea, but again, social media is an extremely important part of the mix these days. And if you haven't heard, Facebook has changed their algorithm like they do every 3 or 4 months, drives us all crazy. But content from friends and family now appears higher on your newsfeed. So your job as marketers is to come up with content that will be shared by your fans, so that that'll then show up in their friends' news feeds. This hardware store actually started posting yearbook pictures on Throwback Thursday. Everybody knows what hashtag TBT is. Everybody loves nostalgia. That's why they're buying more and more local. And they would put staff members' yearbook photos and then ask their customers and their fans to guess who that was. I watched the engagement on this page for a good month, and it went phenomenally well. They had so many people trying to guess, well, who's that, who's this, who's that? And it also drove home the fact that the staff and employees grew up in that neighborhood, went to high school in that neighborhood, and now work in that neighborhood, so it did really well. Just to have a little fun with you, I will give this absolutely gorgeous Independent We Stand Buy Local t-shirt to the first person that can guess one of the celebrities that's pictured up here.
Sandra Bullock in the middle.
Sandra Bullock in the middle. So there you go. On the left-hand side is Kevin Costner. And on the right-hand side, he is a famous country singer. Been in the news a lot lately. Anybody? Any guess? This is Zach Brown. He was not exactly a lady killer in high school, was he? You don't recognize him without the beard. The other way you can build your local brand, and I know this was talked about a lot, especially with the last group, is be local and sell local. Work with local artisans and local makers and help them get their businesses off the ground. Try and devote a little space to them. It could be soaps, it could be jellies, whatever it is. You'll make a partner for life. And when time comes to buy local, they're probably going to buy local from you as well. If you're going to be local, doing business, you need to buy local. If you're going to want consumers to support your local businesses, you need to walk the walk and talk the talk. So, who's designing your logo? Have you found some anonymous website on clear across the world that can give you 3 different logos in half an hour for $100? Or are you going to work with a graphic designer that's been downtown forever, that knows Austin and knows how to develop a good logo to get you noticed? Who's doing your website? Who's balancing your books? What payroll service are you using? These are all important things to think about when you're doing business. If you're going to be local, you need to buy local. In addition, where are you banking? Are you banking with some huge international bank with a glass and ivory tower in New York City? The ones that are in the news every other day for screwing their customers. Excuse my language. You can see how I feel about that. Now, I understand that finding a community bank in Austin is a little challenging. That's actually indicative of what's going on across the country. Community banks are not doing as well as they used to. But in general, you'll find lower fees at community banks. And in general, they take your hard-earned money and they recirculate it in the local economy as well. As I understand it, the Independent Bankers Association of Texas is right here in Austin as well. Rebecca also told me that there are a lot of credit unions. Think about banking local whenever you can. And whatever you do, if you are going to work with another business, network with that business owner, get to know them. One day they're going to be in the market for your goods and services as well, so it's a perfect opportunity to build that relationship. This is an example of social media graphics we've done that are part of a kit that we've created for businesses that do more B2B than B2C. There are some great online tools out there as well that can help you build local. One of our favorites is a company called Snap Retail. They're an automated marketing services company that does emails. They can actually schedule your social media. But what we like about them most is that most, if not all, of their content is buy local oriented. So I recommend that you at least take a look at them. It's a nominal monthly fee and well worth it if you're a busy business owner that doesn't have that time. In addition, we've been working with a company based out of Phoenix called Scott's Marketplace. They're doing some real interesting e-commerce work. And then finally, locally.com. This is a company that popped up in New Orleans a couple years ago. And it was started by the owner of an outdoor equipment company. And they've done some really neat things to connect big brands like North Face and Patagonia with locally owned stores. So you can go on locally.com here in Austin, and if you're looking for a particular North Face jacket, because they're working with the big brands and the locally owned merchants, they can tell you that that particular North Face jacket is actually down at Smith Outfitters, right now, and you can go pick it up. So they're driving that sale right to that local merchant, and again, working with the big brands. Right now, it's still mostly outdoor equipment, but they're starting to work into different verticals. I would definitely keep an eye on that company. What else needs to be said? Rebecca and her small and mighty staff, as well as you guys, have done a phenomenal job. Everybody else in the localization movement in this country looks at AIBA and says, we need to be like them. You've done phenomenal work. If there's somebody in this room that hasn't joined, join now. It's an amazing organization. You're going to make friends for life, and you're going to learn to do business and learn to do it in a much smarter way. So I highly recommend you join. There's another online place that you can network, and it's called Alignable, which you can find at alignable.com. As I understand it, AIBA already has a section on Alignable. It's almost like a LinkedIn and a Facebook combined. You can network with other business owners. You can network with other business owners in your industries. You can share Facebook fans. You can help each other promote sales. Now they're going through some growing pains, and we were actually talking about this last night. They're trying to improve some things, but I would definitely suggest, and it's free of charge, definitely suggest go in with an open mind, join, and feel your way around. If you're going to be local, you need to learn local. In addition to all the resources and all the blogging and all the content that we share, there's some great groups out there, and one of them is the American Independent Business Alliance, and Jeff Milchin, who is a co-founder. Jeff is one of the smartest guys I know in the localization movement. They've got a very active newsletter, website. Go find that newsletter, sign up for it. There's some really good stuff in there. Jeff really kind of has his pulse on what's going on in the localization movement. And they also share ideas from other markets. They're doing the same thing you guys are doing. You can also find Stacy Mitchell. Stacy, I consider the Queen Mom of the localization movement. She's been doing this now 20 plus years. She is brilliant, and I mean brilliant with a capital B, when it comes to looking at local markets and how locally owned businesses can have an impact. She's a senior researcher at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. She's very active on Twitter. I think it's at Stacy F. Mitchell on Twitter. She, they do some tremendous studies and research, but she's also out there trying to figure out what's working everywhere else. So on Twitter, she's sharing those ideas all the time. The Institute for Local Self-Reliance actually came up with a podcast. I think it was the summer of last year. They now have 10 different podcasts that talk about the power of local. If you listen to podcasts, I would definitely try and find that and download it and listen to them. They're very, very good, very enlightening. There's also some very, very good books. One is called Local Vesting, which was written by Amy Cortez. I guess that's going on probably 4 or 5 years. And it talks about the growing movement of investing on Main Street as opposed to Wall Street. It's a really good book. I would recommend that. In the middle is a book called The Distribution Trap. It won the 2012 American Marketing Association Book of the Year Award. It's written by 2 professors out of the University of Akron, and it looks specifically at big brands that have fallen into that trap of working with big boxes and national chains. And again, they squeeze you so hard on the cost sometimes that it can kill a brand. And there's several examples of that. There's also a full chapter on steel and how they bucked the trend. So I would highly recommend that book if you can pick it up, and try and pick it up at a local bookstore if you can. And then finally, Stacy Mitchell, who I talked about, wrote a book called The Big Box Swindle that came out a couple years ago. And it takes a hard look at the mega retailers that are out there and some of the social ills that they have absolutely created, like Walmart and the others, and everything from a decline in civic engagement to lost jobs. Really, really good book, and I would recommend trying to find that and reading that. You also have probably 60 or 70 really good independent retailer associations. There seems to be more and more popping up every other day. One of the biggest is one I work very closely with, is the North American Retail Hardware Association. Its members include 30,000 independent hardware stores across the country. You'd never know there were that many independent hardware stores. But guess what? They sell more nails, drills, and lumber than Home Depot and Lowe's combined. Wow. And you already know what happens to the money that you spend when you spend it there, what it does in the local community. We actually did a study with NRHA spring of 2015 that showed when consumers did home improvement with locally sourced products, 2 times more money actually recirculated in the local community rather than going to a Home Depot or another hardware store, big box. ASTRA, the American American Specialty Toy Retailers Association. That's a mouthful. Another great organization. I think it's close to 1,400 independent toy stores across the country. And one of our favorites is the American Bookseller Association. Has anybody seen their IndieBound campaign? It's absolutely phenomenal. Bookstores are actually one of those categories that did okay, and they're actually starting to make a comeback. And I think a lot of it had to do with ABA. I would recommend, even if you're not a bookstore, look them up, subscribe to their newsletter. They share content all the time that has more applications than for a bookstore. And IndieBound is just a cool campaign. There's also associations now for independent running retailers, independent baby furniture retailers. There's one for independent soccer equipment stores. It seems like there's more and more popping up every day. And that's because people are beginning to understand, especially manufacturers, about the power of independent retail and the strength in numbers. So I would definitely look up one. If you don't know of one, just ask me. I can probably find it for you. There's just so many that seem to be popping up every other day. These associations are putting on some great events. Has everybody heard Record Store Day in May? That's one of my favorites because it showed how the big labels and the famous artists making billions of dollars actually work with the record stores to come out with specialty, releases and so forth and so on. I think everybody knows vinyl sales are really doing well right now. I wish I had not thrown out that box of vinyl records that I had. My son, who's 26, actually found my old turntable up in the attic and refurbished it. And now he's a vinyl fan. I'm just absolutely amazed. There's also Neighborhood Toy Store Day, Plaid Friday, which is the Friday before Small Business Saturday. There's one for bookstores, there's one for running stores. There are a bunch out there. The biggest, obviously, is Small Business Saturday. And say what you will about Amex and their swipe fees and some of their issues, that's the biggest retail holiday of the year now for small businesses. Last year, 115 million people spent $15.6 billion on sales on Small Business Saturday. I might be off by a $0.billion there. But they have obviously poured a lot into this. American Express is doing some interesting things called neighborhood champions, where they actually get groups to organize and hold events. If you go to their website, they actually share a bunch of ideas. You can actually look up by state and city where some of these ideas were executed. So I would highly recommend you participate in Small Business Saturday. The other thing you need to do if you want to build your local brand, and I really understand I'm preaching to the choir because this is one of the most proactive IBAs that are out there. But small businesses are facing challenges like they never have before. And I know you know this better than anybody, but it's really hard to open up and run a small business these days. This is just a sample of the headlines I was able to pull off the net just in the last couple of days. The one up top blew me away. National Federation of Independent Businesses is reporting that the average small business pays $83,000 in regulatory costs the first year. Now, I don't know what it's like in Austin. That $83,000 just blows my mind. Small businesses are absolutely overregulated. It's really hard to open up a small business, which is why entrepreneurship is down substantially. You wouldn't know it by the press, but when the term startup came around, you would think every Tom, Dick, and Harry is starting a new business. That's not actually the fact. Small business openings are down, and it's because we overregulate. It's hard to find money. It's hard to find commercial space because now the national chains have figured out, oh, it's cool to be local. Let's go to the main street that we ignored 10 years ago and open up a new store. What does that do? Raises commercial rents. The other thing you need to worry about is antitrust laws. They have not been enforced in probably 30 or 40 years. And we have a growing monopoly that everybody needs to think about. And that's Amazon. Stacy Mitchell came out with a report, I think it was late November, that talks about Amazon's stranglehold. This is free to download. Actually, I think it's already on the AIBI website. And that study projected that Amazon is now taking 1 out of every $2 of sales on the net. That's 1 out of every 2. They're number 1 in books. They're now number 1 in toys. They will soon be number 1 in clothing sales. They are aggressively pushing into the grocery market. And guess what? They also figured out they need a brick and mortar presence, and now they are opening Amazon bookstores across the country. In addition, another study that was done by ABA and Civic Economics showed that Amazon is projected to have essentially created about 135 million square feet in empty retail space from the stores they helped shut down, and killed about 148,000 jobs. Now, look, I've shopped on Amazon. I had no idea what was going on Amazon. If you're not worried about Amazon, you need to be. If you're thinking about selling on Amazon, think twice. It's like a deal with the devil. There are a number of stories out there where, Amazon is essentially watching your sales. And if they see a product that's doing well, guess where it's going to show up next? On the Amazon store. And they will yank your license to sell stuff on Amazon in a heartbeat. So take some time, read that report, understand what Amazon's doing, and tell your best friend, tell your family. People need to know that Amazon is becoming almost like a monopoly, like the robber barons, the folks that own the railways that were essentially controlled everything from the product to distribution and everything in between, and they get away with stuff that's just unscrupulous. The one thing that really ticked me off was it 2 years ago? Amazon came up with an app. You could go into any store in America and scan a barcode with that app, and they would find that product for you, Amazon would, and give you a better price and ship it to you that day. You did all the hard work, you did all the merchandising, you did all the marketing, and then they came in and stole your business. Please don't shop on Amazon. That's all I'm trying to say. That's all I'm trying to say. Understand the issue is what I'm really trying to say. And there are other companies that are growing like that. I think I read the other day that $70 billion in subsidies from state, local, and federal governments go to economic incentives. Fully 75% go to the big boxes like Walmart and Amazon. I think, doesn't Amazon have a warehouse here in Austin? They claim to be, a job generator, but like I said earlier, they're actually killing jobs. So please download that study or email me, I'll send it to you. It's definitely worth a good read. Whoop, did too quickly. So I'd like to kind of close with another one of our videos. We have a lot of fun with video content, if you haven't guessed, because we're trying to tell the story of the business owner, again, the baker that's been on the same corner for 150 years, or the bookstore, whose owner is about to pass on the business to his daughter. We love to tell these stories. And a lot of these stories take place on main streets, and I'm using Main Street generically. Everybody has a street or a section of their neighborhood that is really kind of like the gathering place for shopping, culture, food, just good civic connections. And so 2 years ago we started working with the National Main Street Center, which is based in Chicago and is a subdivision of the National Trust for Historic Preservation. And our goal was to teach folks about the importance of Main Streets. I don't know, did anybody even know there was a National Main Street Center? Ever heard of it? 1,400 Main Street programs across the country that are trying to bring back, Main Streets. And they're doing a phenomenal job. I would definitely ask that you look them up as well. But this is a product of that first road trip that we did, which we called Main Streets Make Us Better.
Main streets are the places we call home, the places that we make our most special memories. So when you think about Main Street, you have to think about, it's about history, it's about culture, and it's about people. And so if people are looking around them and trying to figure out what they want to support, I think Main Street should be at the top of the list because they're really supporting our heritage.
What's amazing about Main Streets is that they're the life of any community, whether it's a small town or a big town. It has so much energy in the center of town that breathes life throughout the community.
At the very basics, it's the best place to live, work, or play. There's no place better to meet a cross-section of your community from all ages and all walks of life. At another level, the Main Street and the Main Street businesses are both the heart and the brain of most communities. These are the people who live and work in your community, are the people who take care of it, who work in it. And at an economic level, when you spend locally, you're supporting locally. You're supporting your neighbors and you're supporting your local tax base.
Well, Main Street really is the best indicator of the health of a city. You can see the vitality of a city, you can see how it's doing economically, you can see how it's doing socially. You can tell that just by driving or walking the main street of any town.
Well, I think everybody should care about their local main streets because healthy neighborhoods start with good people in the neighborhood. What happens beyond there is the businesses that support the residents. Healthy neighborhoods support healthy businesses, and healthy businesses in turn reciprocate by supporting the neighborhoods in which they provide their business and services.
Zigzagged from Detroit to Boston over 5 days and visited some of the neatest main streets around there. Detroit was eye-opening. Everybody knows that Detroit's gone through some really, and still are, hard times, and we visited some neighborhoods that were just unbelievable. But the intensity, the intense focus and spirit of entrepreneurs in Detroit is unbelievable. They've been beat down like you wouldn't believe. So for them, really, there's no place to go but up, but the energy in that town is absolutely phenomenal. Our next road trip is the Great Rocky Mountain Road Trip. We're going to take off from Denver, head to Casper, Wyoming, then to Bozeman, Montana, hope I said that correctly, Idaho Falls, Idaho, and then Salt Lake City. So we're really looking forward to visiting main streets in these old western towns where the gold rushes took place. And please be on the lookout. That'll take place, I think it's the last week in April. Follow us on social media. It's always a great trip, and we have a lot of fun. As a result of our partnership with the National Main Street Center, we actually came up with a contest last year called America's Main Streets, and I just wanted to mention this because there's actually a big cash prize. It took place over 3 months last spring, and about 300 or 400 main streets were nominated across the country. And essentially, all you had to do was tell us a good story about a Main Street, some of the things they're doing to help their small businesses thrive, small businesses and communities thrive. There were, again, 300 or 400 Main Streets in every state in the Union, from the border to border, from ocean to ocean. In a small town in Linden, Washington, the red raspberry capital of the world, 90% of the red raspberries. I was over red raspberries after that trip. Actually, I wasn't. They were phenomenally good, and they grow a lot of blueberries as well. But they won, and the cash prize was $25,000. And this was a town of 12,000 people. Their Main Street Association, I think we doubled their budget with that cash prize alone. And they spent it all on beautification programs that they were trying to get off the ground. So what I'm saying is, this next one that starts on February 27th, if you know of a good independent business district that needs to be nominated, you might want to check out the website at mainstreetcontest.com.
We might know of
You might know a few, huh? It's really easy. The application process is very easy. Just tell a really good story, because then we open it up to consumers to actually vote on those Main Streets. And also, use your social media channels. Keep harping on that. Social media is a great place to tell your Main Street story, and so we rely on it a lot. And you could as well to win that 25 grand. So, that's it. In closing, I am absolutely honored again to be here. I'm honored to work to bring American consumers more information about why they should shop and support locally owned businesses like yours. Small businesses are really what created this country. They are the foundation of this country, and we really need to start taking better care of them.
I have a question. Will you take questions?
Absolutely. I was going to do that next.
I'm sorry. I jumped ahead of you.
No worries.
As you travel around the country, and are you meeting with more like local businesses or some organizations, or both?
Both. When we first started out, it was mostly small business owners, and again, that's because we were trying to put a face, to these small businesses. So when you go to our website or look at any of our marketing materials, you'll see a lot of those business owners. But then we started to realize that to make a bigger impact, we need to start talking to the small business organizations and Main Street groups to reach out to even more businesses. So on a typical trip, and actually I forgot to mention this earlier, in addition to 5 cities and 5 states in 5 days, we try to interview 5 business owners. And so this is a run and gun video production. But we shifted that a couple of years ago, and so now we might do 5 interviews, with 3 will be small business owners. 1 might be with a small business group. 1 might be with a consumer to give us their feedback on why they get their haircut at that local haircut place. So that actually it's been great for us, because now we have a lot more content that people want to share, and continue to spread the word about the importance of buying local.
So as you travel around, can you share with us, like, what is the one biggest concern that you hear expressed? What are they most worried about? Can you?
The road ahead? Actually, our business trip took place the road trip took place last March, so politics really wasn't on everybody's mind. I think it's business regulation. I think small business owners are absolutely buried. That combined with a lack of finance, the big banks, after they screwed us in 09, 08, whatever it was. Boy, I've never used that word twice in a presentation. They really tightened up credit. It's really hard. Again, I know I'm preaching hard to get a small business loan. And that's actually where that book Local Vesting comes in, because now Amy, and she's actually got a very active blog as well, Amy's trying to convince people that, if you've got a portfolio, you might have some on Wall Street, but you obviously need to think about investing in Main Street as well, because the returns are much greater, and it'll build a better community. So really, I think it's overregulation, and you're starting to hear more about the concentration of power with the Amazons and the Walmarts of the world. It's funny because, and it's not funny, it's interesting, let me put it that way. Antitrust regulation, or the lack thereof, has a lot of bipartisan support right now. So it's being felt and talked about on both sides of the aisles. How many issues can you say that's happening right now? Now, I have no idea where that's going to go in the next 4 years. I do not want to get into politics, but I think it's going to be an interesting 4 years. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Just leave it at that.